I would say, like, as far as like a guiding principle about where to think about what to automate and when, think of the agents as humans with infinite patience. And I think this is really kind of like infinite patience, but very little creativity. All right. And so the question is, where would I need that? Right. And if there's a place in your workflow that doesn't require creativity, but requires infinite patience, then that's a great place to put it. And so for something like I said, with our log system, any human theoretically could just read all the logs, right? And like step through all of them and like, but no one has the patience to do that, right? And no one has the long context memory to like see it all at once, right? So those sorts of areas, and if you have to do it all the time. So, you know, like that's really the areas to think about. What you don't want to be doing is sort of, like you said, this one-to-one mapping of like, oh, we need a CEO agent, we need a CFO agent. Like that is, you know, the wrong thinking. And you need to blow those kinds of ideas out. Rather, you need to think of it from like an operationalistic perspective of what is the thing actually doing, and would a human ever really could a human do this but not really want to do it? And those sorts of workloads are the best to be put through. So that's where we start out here, is anything that like theoretically could be done by a person who isn't like a genius and super creative, but just doesn't make sense to. As far as, you know, solving things in what things we're learning in a different way, I mean, through the let me put it this way. I started coding when I was like 7 or 8 years old, right? It was the thing that made me different when I was growing up. I could do this cool thing. It opened every pathway in my life, and all my success in my life has been rooted at the idea that I was a really good coder at this very specific point in time. You know, I was born in the late 80s. You know, I got to be there right as the internet started coming on, you know, at the time when software was starting to eat the world for real. And I was young at that time, you know, like all these things that lined up. And I did create a whole bunch of, you know, in my mind, up until only like 6 months ago, I didn't use AI really at all. I wrote all my code myself, and I thought I'm still better than all the AIs. Like they can't do what I do. And then really, like in the last 3 to 6 months through using Hermes Agent, I had to admit that that time has come and gone. But rather than being disappointed about that, I would say it only means that I get to run the clock back and be early again, like I was when I was young, when there was like software was eating the world. Like, so it actually is freeing in some way if you're willing to allow it to be an opportunity. And to get back, you know, specifically to your question about learning things to do differently. Yeah, I would just say that like anything that is aesthetic, is based in the aesthetics. The AIs have no discernment for that. They don't care if it's pretty. They don't, and it's not even that they don't care. It actually is, what I'm finding is that, you know, they really don't know. Like they really don't have human taste. And they're incredibly smart in the vector of like what you and I would consider to be a genius person who would, you know, we try to self-select through to get someone into Stanford, and like, what is that makes a person a genius? They can do that easy, ace of spades, like solve math problems, write code. Like, you know, we needed to win the genetic lottery to do that. They can do it right out of the box. But what they can't do, and what's something that like almost every human can do, is really discern, have an innate sense of aesthetic, that because, and I think the reason for that is just simply because our human sense of aesthetic is grounded in the lived experience that all of us share as common men and women on this planet. And AIs, if you think about how they were trained, they're just so divorced from the experience that you and I went through, you know, for being born, living in time, growing, and even our biology from the evolutionary pressures that created us in the first place. And so our aesthetic is actually something that is quite unique and is quite very like there could be a million different ideas. Animals have different ideas of what's aesthetically important in their pack structure. Like, you know, different. There's a million one of those. There's only one math really. And there's only one like science, like, so like, it's interesting that like the things that are like the universal computational stuff, the AIs can take. The things that are very unique to us, things, but to us don't feel unique because it's the fish and water argument, right? Like we don't feel them to be a unique thread because we're so immersed in it. And it's only when we're sort of faced with this thing that was finally, we have another example. There was only us to begin with. There's now another example that we look at it and go, oh, why is this so different? You can think about it about slop or whatever you want to call it. But getting back to what you said, they will solve things in an aesthetically unpleasing way, and you just kind of have to learn to deal with that. And you should not rely on them, at least right now, for those things that are grounded whose success is grounded within it being, aesthetically pleasing to a human, whatever that may be.